Good morning, guys. What's going on out there? How we doing? So today we are getting into chapter 4 of Catcher in the Rye, and this seems like a good place to begin exploring symbolism and motif, because this chapter does in fact contain both of these things. So first, I'm like begging some of you guys, if you need to change the address or add your address to the directory, please reach out today. Send me an email or message on Hangouts today. Let's get this figured out, because moving forward, much of your grade for quarter 4 is going to be determined by what goes into those blogs. So if I don't have access to those blogs, you don't get points. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it's got to be. All right, to the good stuff. Symbolism. So symbolism is when an object, an action, a setting, or even an individual character in a story is used to represent or signify a deeper idea or concept. Okay, that object, action, setting, or character represents information, insight, or a deeper conceptual idea. Now, these deeper ideas can be related to concepts or more specific information about the story, as I just mentioned. What am I talking about when I say that? Well, let's look at these two different examples here. Yorick's skull in Hamlet helps us understand specific information about Hamlet. Does it also touch on concepts and themes? Absolutely. But it also reveals something about Hamlet. It represents his fixation on death and the past, because we have to remember that the skull, that's literally like a remnant of somebody's life. Okay, it's what's left over after someone passes away. It's a memory of them, a physical memory. Now, for Boo Radley and To Kill a Mockingbird, he represents more of a concept. He represents more of an idea, specifically the idea of the unknown, because he's shrouded in mystery. Nobody knows anything about him. So this causes all this wild speculation about him, all of these rumors, all of this fear, and a great deal of misunderstanding about who he truly is. Now, the important thing and the more challenging part is, how do we find and interpret symbols when we're reading a piece of literature? Now, for finding it, here's what you want to do. You want to pay attention to turning points. That's where something changes in the story, okay? Something breaks away or becomes altered. And you also want to look for key moments that are really important. Both of those places have often got symbols sprinkled throughout them. You want to look for moments with very detailed description of a setting or a character or anything like that. Those extremely detailed descriptions are often loaded with little details that represent bigger ideas. You want to look for moments where something is focused on or described that doesn't really seem to advance the story or plot. If you've ever read a book and you've been like, oh my God, why the hell is he talking about this guy's hat for so long? What is the point? Oh my God, why are they talking about this specific tree for so long? It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Well, what's probably happening there is the writer is trying to embed a symbol that speaks to the story in a deeper way, not in a direct way. And then finally, of course, make sure you're looking out for repetition. That one's one of the easier ones to find, and that is, of course, a motif. Now, when we're interpreting, we have to do a few things. We have to think about specific details like color or name or the position or any of these different individual details. So think of the rabbits in Of Mice and Men. So the rabbits in Of Mice and Men are described as all of these crazy colors, all of these otherworldly, unrealistic colors. That specific detail shows us that that whole dream of the rabbits is just a fantasy and has nothing to do with reality. Consider the associations people might have with the item or action. So, for example, a flower often represents love to us. A skull represents death. Okay, a doorway represents a new beginning or a change. Think about common associations that people might have with whatever your symbol is. And then finally, you have to make connections between the item and the action, conflict, or character. So think about the rabid dog in To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, that chapter seems a little bit out of place when you look at the rest of the novel. But when you think about what happens in there and the concepts within it, it becomes a little bit clearer, okay? This dog was once something very familiar and nice that has now become really horrible and almost evil to the characters, just like the town itself. What was once familiar is now dangerous. You have to think about the connections between the symbol and the story. Now, as for motif, motif is really one of the most important components of literature. If you can find and identify and interpret those motifs, you got the entire idea of the story pretty much sewed up. It's a symbol that recurs throughout an entire piece. So you see it several times. You see it over and over and over again. Now, a motif will always represent concepts. So if we're able to recognize those motifs, we understand those concepts, and then we can then interpret themes from those. We can figure out what the writer is trying to teach us about that concept. Okay, so some examples here. Poison in Hamlet. Poison appears several times. Okay, it represents the concepts of corruption and betrayal. It corrupts our characters. It corrupts Laertes. It represents his corruption, his fall from grace, as well as Claudius's. And both of those characters betray people that they are close to, again, represented by their use of poison. The mockingbirds in To Kill a Mockingbird is another really good example. They represent the concepts of innocence and selflessness, okay, of not doing anyone any harm and also making the world a better place. And we can see that connected to characters like Boo Radley, who is trying to be as harmless as possible and ultimately saves the day. Okay, so a few things that we have to remember moving forward, okay? We will have a check-in tomorrow, and we will ask you to analyze a technique within a passage. Okay, I'm going to post an exemplar response on my blog regarding that this afternoon. Moving forward, I'm going to ask you guys to be mindful of motif. I have created, oh my God, what's wrong with me this morning? I have created a motif document, and that'll be attached to the post to help you collect and organize your thoughts and move through the novel. It's going to be very, very, very useful to you. Every couple of chapters, every chapter, if you notice a motif, to pop it in there. We will also be having some video Socratics next week. So sign up for your session in the Catch Your Socratic 1 document I've posted in the classroom. We'll be doing those on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Figure out a time slot on that document. Okay, guys, have a magical day out there. Bye-bye.